want to say this about my friend, Attorney Ben Crump. What you see on television is 1%, maybe less of what he actually does. He inspired me 10 years ago. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm doing a radio program. I get a call about a man elected to mayor in Deep South Georgia, a black man. Yep. And they said they took the keys from the black mayor. They then said he couldn't get a check. This city was so segregated that white people were buried on one side of the cemetery. Black folk were buried on the other. We had to go and confirm this directly. And who drove down to Deep South Georgia in order to get justice for that black elected official? None other than Ben Crump. Come on, dear brother.
Love you, brother.
Love you back, brother.
Yeah, and that's when he was just a regular commentator. He wasn't Dr. Richey then. I mean, I just want to acknowledge and give him his flowers because I've watched him evolve to one of the most influential journalists, one of the most influential voices in the black community. I mean, not only is he a commentator, but I just found out recently he's also a scientist. And I just found out even more recently that he's also a graduate of law school. You talking about a Renaissance brother. Yeah, help me give some love to one of my heroes, Dr. Richey. If you ever want to know what's really happening in Black America, tune in to him any day of the week. Thank you, Rashad. Yeah. And Bowie State, the first HBCU in the state of Maryland. I'm so honored to be here with you all at the Dionne Warwick Theater, especially with people like Delegate Malcolm Ruff, who not only do I work with in the legislature, but more importantly, man, we work together in courts on the front lines, and if you ever in a foxhole, nobody you would rather be with than this Negro who fights for our people. That's Malcolm Ruff. Baltimore is better because of you. And the panel left, I wanted to thank them, Rashad and Thomas, because it was such a dynamic panel. I mean, yeah, don't they deserve a round of applause? I mean, they wasn't holding back, and that's important that we express ourselves. Mayor Stephanie Rollins had the opportunity to work with her, and I was real impressed, Malcolm, with the community activist, Hill. I won't keep you all because I know we have many important things to do. I want to thank Equal Justice Now for having these important, courageous conversations all across America. I mean, they are committed to trying to make a difference for the better. And I have to digress for a second because I see some people out there that I must acknowledge. For all the lawyers and judges who are with us, please stand and be recognized because we're in this together. You know, thank you, Rosalind. Yeah, we all in this together, y'all. And then before I go any further, I just will tell you all, sisters and brothers, as a point of personal privilege, that all great men may not be members of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, but all members of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated are great men. So we're the brothers of Omega Psi Phi. Please stand and be recognized. The greatest fraternity on planet Earth. And then finally, I want to thank Equal Justice Now. I was at the United Nations speaking on behalf of a resolution presented by the president of Ghana, Dr. Muhammad. And the resolution, you'll see it in the news, is about having the United Nations formally document that the transatlantic slave trade was the most grievous crime in modern civilization. And that's so important when we talk about speaking truth to power, Dr. Richey. Equal Justice Now, thanks to them, we have a copy of my debut novel, Worse Than a Lie, which is, thanks to you all, a New York Times bestseller. And so we're going to sign the books. Dr. Richey and us going to take some pictures with you all. And I say that because even when we're in the United Nations, we believe the resolution is going to pass, and we believe it's going to be the groundwork for reparations for African countries and descendants of Africa. But what's worse than a lie? Because our country is not supporting the resolution. England, France, the colonizers are not supporting the resolution. They're going to continue to keep the lie that, white supremacy breeds. And so I say this in this book, What's Worse Than a Lie, and it'll be a good segue, I think, to the next panel. I get asked this in these interviews, and it's a legal thriller, much like John Grisham's The Rainmaker, Michael Connelly's The Lincoln Lawyer. And, I kept waiting, Rashad, for them to write about a black superhero trial lawyer.
Come on, brother.
And so, since they would never do it, I said, well, the hell, I'm going to write it myself. And so, we did. But I get asked in every interview, whether it's Gayle King, The View, or whatever, what's worse than a lie? And I remember my grandmother saying, what's worse than a lie? That is to tell the truth and have nobody believe you. So imagine what Equal Justice Now is doing and why bail reform is so important, because imagine, as the brother said on the panel, you're telling the truth and you're fighting for your liberty, and nobody in the system believes you. Because, it's not a fallacy. There are sisters and brothers every day all over America who go in courtrooms and are forced to lie on themselves and enter into these trumped up felony plea agreements, and I do mean trumped up. And they do it because they understand that the alternative of rolling the dice and going to a trial with a jury of anything but their peers, that it's more likely that they could end up spending decades in prison for a crime that they didn't commit. And that's worse than a lie. And so with that, we are going to, Rashad, who's been doing a fantastic job, is going to introduce the mental health panel. And when you think about what's worse than a lie, Thursday morning, I'm flying to Hartford, Connecticut. Reverend Al is going to meet me there. He's going to eulogize Stephen Johnson, a brother who was having a mental health crisis. His sister called 911 wanting the ambulance to come and get him, Rosalind, to take him to the hospital. But the police came out. And the police came out now, and 3 of them, it's all on video. You don't have to take Ben Crump's word for it. For 12 minutes, you got 3 officers, it's broad daylight. The brother weighs about 400 pounds. So he ain't moving fast. He has a knife in his hand. They're trying to talk to him, de-escalate the situation, and for 12 minutes, they're talking, he's moving, but, they have the crisis intervention specialists who they say, don't yell, don't show lights, don't excite them. And so these 3 officers are trying to do it. A 4th officer, young white boy, pulls up. And I mean, in less than 30 seconds, he gets out of the car. You see all this on video. He gets out of the car, and then he says 2 commands. Never asked him to, stop or anything. Says, drop the weapon, and then unloads. Empties the clip, 9 bullet holes. I mean, and 400 pounds, nobody's in fear of their life. Even when he shoots him, you see the white female officer, you can read her lips, Rashad. She says, why? And what's worse than a lie? How the police union and the mayor and everybody are trying to close ranks and say that, he is in fear of his life, and that's why he had to shoot. I mean, it's almost they saying, who you gonna believe, your lying eyes or our false narrative? He needed a helping hand because he was having a mental health crisis. And you having a mental health crisis and the color of your skin should not equal a death sentence. So get ready for the next great panel. Thank you to Equal Justice Now. Thank you to Dr. Rashad Richey.
Wow, let's give our champion another round of applause, Benjamin Crump. Ben Crump, Worse Than a Lie. We will start that book signing in just a moment. Our mental health panel is ready. Ladies and gentlemen, welcoming to the stage, we have Associate Professor, University's Department of Psychology, Dr. Ayanna Lynch. Bringing back to the stage, Associate Dean, College of Professional Studies, Associate Professor, Department of Criminal Justice, Dr. Matasha L. Harris. We also have Civil Rights Attorney, Trial Attorney, Attorney Mario Williams. Thank you. Coming back, we have Mr. Devontae Hill, Community Activist Extraordinaire. CEO of Far Southeast Family Strengthening Collaborative, Dion Bussy Reader. Also, coming back to the stage, former Mayor of Baltimore, Stephanie Rawlings Blake. And founder and director, Sincerely Love, and a mental health advocate, state and beyond, Jonathan Metlock. We're going to talk about the real conversation connected to mental health, and Attorney Crump already created a great platform for us to have that conversation. I can't tell you how many times we've been in production meetings or we have an investigation for a report in my production room, and we're going through the case file of a person who simply had a mental health episode but are now dead. They didn't get the opportunity to go to jail. They didn't get an opportunity for health care, is what they actually needed. So I want to start with Dr. Lynch. There's a psychology that's prevailing on both sides of this. One, the psychology that somehow the discussion of mental health is taboo in our community. Second, the psychology that says to a cop who may not be as cultured that they need to resolve this by way of shooting. I remember one story where an officer unloaded on a person. It was a black male. The black female cries out and says, "Why did you do that?" His immediate response was, "I don't know." Talk to us about that.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be one of the voices in this really important conversation. I really appreciate the previous panel because a lot of that has been addressed. There's so many so much misconception in our society about mental health, about what it looks like, the perception of dangerousness around mental health. And it really boils down to people just not really being educated on either side, from the community side, as well as the police officers, law enforcement. The fact that sometimes when our family members and our friends are in crisis, and we call 911, obviously thinking that you're trying to get help for them, but recognizing that the people who are going to be the responders, typically the police, aren't well educated in what your family member needs at that moment. And so your intention for them to get help is usually going to be responded by somebody who is, in their attempt to keep the public safe, is going to think about the threat to themselves first and respond in that way. And so a lot of it has to do with just misconception and the need for people to be really clear on what mental health is and is not. Mental health is not criminality. Mental health is far-ranging. There's a continuum of wellness, and it is something that needs to be met with empathy as opposed to emergency and reactions and defensiveness.
Well said. Let me go to Attorney Mario Williams. It's become dire, man. It's really dire. If you need the police because something's happening and you happen to be black, you have to consider things that other folk don't have to consider before you call 911. And you have to consider that your life and the life of the person in front of you may change for the rest of your lives. That's a sad reality when our tax dollar funds the operation of safety. It should. What are some of the elements you've seen in the law, positive ones and negative? But I want you to talk about the remedy. What can actually be done in between the notion of calling 911 and the reality of a cop showing up who may not have an inkling of training for mental health?
Oh, that's a very good question. I want to kind of piggyback on what was just said. Now, I'll use it. You're from Atlanta. I'm from Atlanta.
Yep.
So Jamarian Robinson.
Yep.
Shot at 100 times. Yeah. I took over that case. So what happened was his mother called the police and said, hey, I know you're looking for this is really sad, and this happens everywhere. Mr. Crump pointed it out. I've done it in Alabama, seen it everywhere. So his mother calls and says, hey, I know you're looking for my son. He's off his meds. He's a college student. Mm-hmm. He's no harm. I'm going to go ahead and tell you where he is so you can come and get him. They put out an entire federal task force. Yep. Because he had what they wanted him for was an altercation previously with a law enforcement officer, and they were upset about what happened. So a task force come. Now, I'm in deposition. I got one of the task force members under oath. They're lying about a whole bunch of stuff. But the bottom line is this. I say, hey, weren't you actually told when you meet for your operation plan before you go out that he was a mental health, had real problems, off his medication? He said, man, that doesn't matter to me. See, now, one issue is being not trained. Right. Another issue is don't care. And that's what I've experienced. You don't care. So he said, hey, Mario, if we took into account people telling us people are off their meds or mental health, or just somebody's acting erratic and crazy, then we would have to adjust every operation plan, and we're not going to take, this is under oath now. Mm-hmm. We're not going to take the time to make that adjustment. Now, anybody familiar with police procedure definitely understands on call.
Right.
SWAT teams are on call. They get paid even if they're not called, but they have certain criteria that they have to meet in order to be ready to respond. You'll never see an on-call mental health professional. Mm. There will be no dedication of funds at all to just say, hey, we have health professionals all around the county, city, wherever you are, and we're going to put a couple of them on call, so when we get these calls, we're going to bring them out there with us. Okay. What happens instead? You get a cop, typically white, especially if a black person is involved. Some people are in class. And they go out there absolutely convinced, and this is the inherent criminality situation, convinced that, and I'm going to talk to the problem, convinced that, hey, look, if this guy budges on me, if he uses any weapon, female or guy, I'm going to shoot him. So they go out there with a gun. They don't go out there with their baton, no tasers. Many a times I say, hey, didn't you have a baton or taser? I didn't bring it. So I say, okay, so you shoot the person, kill him or her. And then here's the issue of qualified immunity. And this is the problem that I have. I absolutely believe in protesting at a local level, agencies, everybody who's involved. You want to go out there, you want to protest, you want to make that statement, but you got to protest these judges. So what happens is the person, this is the Second Amendment issue that I'll touch on too. The person shoots and says, hey, I reasonably fear for my life. Now, objectively speaking, without any details, you say, oh, but that person did pull a gun or that person did have a weapon. But we already know the background facts. We already know, hey, man, it was your negligence. It was your desire to shoot first and talk later that put you in harm's way. And then you use deadly force to try to bail yourself out. Now, the Supreme Court has said that's okay. They say, hey, look, Mario, and people need to understand how egregious qualified immunity is. It is a court, and I've done it in all flashbang cases, all kind of stuff. It's a court telling you, hey, Mario, you're right. A jury could easily find that this is a constitutional violation. But you know what? I don't believe he had fair warning, or I believe he was in fear. And it doesn't matter if his own negligence put him there. So we're going to go in and say he's immune. He doesn't go to trial for something a judge admits is absolutely a constitutional violation.
That's right.
That's one of the saddest things ever in our state of law. So a problem is qualified immunity. A problem is training. And then another problem is you're just sending out people who are absolutely scared of black people. So you're sending out somebody that just doesn't even want to be there, is absolutely scared of a black person, has no stress tests. And I always say this, I say, hey, man, you got to get some testing going on here. People who can perform under stress. My favorite quote from a judge is, hey, look, I know you know how to shoot a gun. You got these 100% marksman stuff. Do you know when to shoot one? You have no training. You have no concept of when to shoot a firearm. And even if you do know, you're overwhelmed by your fear in the situation because of the inherent and criminality, implicit bias. So you're going to fire anyways. Why do we have you here? And Crump will tell you, anybody will tell you, when you get one of these guys that come out here and just shoot first, they always have a background.
Always.
Always. They've been on early warning, detected, everything, and you still have them on there. So one solution is just reforming and setting another thing that favors them. And everyone says, hey, why do these guys get away with this, choking somebody out for 25-cent cigarettes? How do they not get criminal charges? Because that's the first and foremost thing a family always wants. I've never met a family whose loved one is the victim of some type of violence or killing that says, I just want money. The first thing they say to me, I know it's the first thing they say to Mr. Crump and any lawyer, hey, man, this guy needs to go to prison. So then they say, then it's heartbreaking because there's a game being played. The prosecutor overcharges the person because it's almost impossible to prove murder in the first degree because of the intent element. But the other thing is, and this is a nightmare, is you allow cops to go in and testify uncontested to grand juries. So a cop in Georgia can come in, and I know because I haven't represented a cop and I've gone into a grand jury and beat the charge. But it wasn't for a shooting, it was some dealing with another cop. But you go in and you say, and he gives I've been in the Marine Corps, I served my country, I reasonably fear for my life. And instead of doing manslaughter or negligent homicide or giving a plethora of options to get the indictment, they just say, we're just going for murder one. And then somebody says, well, we can't meet those elements. And then he walks out free. That's what happens. That's the reality of it.
One of the elements you talked about, obviously, is how qualified immunity becomes a catalyst for inappropriate and criminal behavior. And I don't think we're outraged enough about what qualified immunity is. It's not statutory, typically. It's created. It's created. That's right.
You know why? It's a policy-driven document that essentially says, if we allow you to sue officers for every mistake they make, these guys are not, no offense to law enforcement, but there's so many wrongs that are committed, you're just going to bankrupt the city.
Well,
so it's policy-driven. They just say, we just got to protect them at the expense of your constitutional rights.
One of the dynamics of the policy, you can always tell the DNA of a policy based on why it came here. There was no qualified immunity in 1958.
That's right.
When did qualified immunity come? When white cops needed to be protected civilly and criminally from bashing in the heads of black students. That's when this thing of qualified immunity emerged. So the DNA of it is rooted in that level of bias. To Dr. Harris, I want to go to you about the issue of law enforcement and who responds to that 911 call. All right, so Ithaca, New York. Look it up when y'all get a moment. Years ago, there was a progressive mayor in Ithaca, New York, and they looked at their metadata of 911 calls, and they said, well, listen, 49% of the 911 calls are actually for social-related things. It's not about crime. So what they started to do is every cop that either got fired or resigned, they would replace that cop with 2 social workers in Ithaca, New York. And their goal was to get their social work staff and their police staff to be representative of the actual 911 calls. That was a heck of a progressive dynamic. Crime went down, community reelected them, and it was a great approach to law enforcement. Why do you think law enforcement doesn't operate for the betterment of public safety overall? And what are the elements that could be implemented to do so?
So one of the things is that when we look at the United States, we have criminalized mental illness.
Yeah.
And so when we saw in the 1960s with the closing of psychiatric hospitals, we saw an influx of individuals with mental illness enter into the criminal justice system. And so now what we have is a police response instead of a clinical response. Mm-hmm. And so in order to address that, we have to educate our individuals. We have to make sure that police officers receive culturally competent training. And in some states, they actually have where a mobile crisis team will actually join the police officer. So we have to do a better job with making sure that our law enforcement officers are equipped with tools or even someone in the supportive role to assist them so that we're not arresting or criminalizing a mental illness.
Well said. And to Devontae Hill, as a community activist who's also involved in policy, some of these things won't change until there's a policy shift or a statutory law that's passed. Sometimes even those who are progressive, they don't have the stomach for some of the, as they would call it, radical solutions. It doesn't seem radical to me if it works. That should be the goal.
Yeah, I think the last 2 questions that you asked drive directly into Memphis, Tennessee, okay, where, for starters, we just had a huge issue that most people know about was the murder of Tyree Nichols, mm-hmm, where 5 officers brutally murdered a young man legitimately with their body killed, just out in the open. And one of the things that we were able to do that perhaps those officers didn't know is prior to our first African-American police director, C.J. Davis, coming to Memphis, to which I sat on the board to make sure she was hired, we created policy changes. Those policy changes gave C.J. Davis the ability to change the entire scenario. Whereas we see with Freddie Gray and Trayvon Martin and Ahmaud Arbery, these officers went into a system of arbitration, and they were essentially put on a paid leave, and some of them even got their job back. Whereas in this instance, probably for the first time, at least in my work history in the world of policy change and activism, we were met with some degree of justice before we were met with the body cam footage. These officers were fired before we didn't have to protest for the video for 6 months. We didn't have to, there were some complexities that still were in play, obviously, to protect these officers, but arbitration was not one of them. Memphis is a very unique place where 30% of our city live below the poverty line. And so obviously there is a complexity there of mental health. And so I advocate that we have to be careful when we call the police. And we have to ensure that operators, 911 operators, when we call and they say, do you need a fire truck, an ambulance, or an officer, they need to also ask, do you need a crisis response team? Is this person experiencing a mental health? That way, when that officer arrives to the scene, he already understands and knows without a shadow of a doubt you're dealing with someone that is having a mental episode of mania. I'll give you another example. A dear friend of mine who a lot of people, maybe young people in this room perhaps know, he's a rapper. And he consumed some shrooms, which is what my generation has been doing here lately. And shrooms across the country have been driving our young black men into a suicidal mania consistently. Even Little John's son. The list goes on. It's happening across the country. Young people are consuming shrooms and they're having this crisis mania. But this particular rap artist, who's a dear friend of mine, goes live on social media in the middle of a mania. 40,000 people watching him from all over the world down in Florida. And someone called the police. And he's basically held up in the house. The officers are outside, 10 officers outside in front of his home with rifles pulled. It was bad. And I just knew that I was getting ready to lose my friend on live Instagram. So I picked up my phone and I called the chief of police down there in Florida, and I made it very apparent that I'm hoping that you didn't send the wrong unit to this particular call, because this should be a crisis response team and not a criminal response team. And I think when we make that very clear to our law enforcement, that we understand that there is a different response that we can garner, I think that they will enter into these opportunities as ways to gloan and glean themselves, to say that we alleviated this issue without someone actually becoming hurt.
What's it, Dr. Harris?
Yes, and one thing I wanted to add in reference to Bowie State University, we have been on the front lines here in Maryland in reference to police reform. A few years ago, we actually repealed the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights. And so what that means for Maryland is that police officers can only do no-knock warrants between the hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. They cannot purchase surplus military equipment and take them into our communities. They no longer have the 5-day waiting period if they kill one of our people. And so with that, we're proud, Bowie State is proud that we were at the forefront of such legislation.
Well said. Madam Mayor?
I think it's also important when we're talking about this legislation to hold ourselves accountable as a community, because in the months prior to the death of Freddie Gray, I was in Annapolis testifying for reforms to the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights. Mm-hmm. And I begged the legislature to change the law to give us more ability to take bad cops off the street. And the Black Caucus wouldn't even have a vote on it.
Why?
Because I was stepping out there doing something that people weren't doing, and to my political detriment. And you have to be willing to do the hard things, mm-hmm. and not always wait until there's a tragedy. Now, after the death of Freddie Gray, as the late great Elijah Cummings would say, Lottie Dottie and everybody was on the bandwagon. Yeah. When if months before, you understand what I'm saying? Like we have to hold ourselves accountable to support the people who are willing to do the hard things, and not just react.
Jonathan Matlock.
Thank you so much, Dr. Richey. I take a totally different approach in this particular matter, and I'm going to stop everybody really quick, and I'm going to, hopefully everybody's listening, and I want everybody to tell me that you love me.
I love you, brother.
Tell me that you love me. The thing is, it was difficult for some of you to do it. Every single thing that we're talking about today, now, can be resolved if we say we love each other, if we can actually do the work. So I'm here in a totally different perspective on criminal reform, bail reform, community reform. I've been an activist for decades. I've been a mayor. I've been an elected official, assistant secretary. I've done it all. But I've seen the work on the ground, what's happening. Post-pandemic, there's been an epidemic of isolation and loneliness. Tell me I'm right. Depression, anxiety, and PTSD. We as a black community are waiting on the shoe to drop, even in this moment. But the one thing that we have not tried is love. Is love.
Well said, brother.
So we're not talking about the superficial thing. I think one scholar said best that love has never been a movement. Why? The thing that we need the most is the thing that we get the least. So with sincerely love, one of the things that I found that I had to lose somebody to suicide, if we want to talk about mental health, based on the fact that they had so much pressure as a black man. I saw this brother 4 days before he left this world. If you look at me, you look at this brother and the brothers on stage and the brother beside you, they look just like us, chill, brother, whole men trying to go through life. He had to turn it off. He had to turn it off. And we don't have enough conversation about looking in that mirror first and foremost and say, brother, I love myself, so outwardly I can love you. We're all dealing with the same thing. So with that, to help and heal every single thing that we're talking about, every single thing that ails us, we have to start here. Brother, don't you agree? Don't you agree that we have to, even if we missed it in the homes, even if we've been missing it in the communities, we have to start now, brother. I love you. Nothing you've done, but I see who you are, and I love you as a result. And that's being a man. That's being thugged out.
Very well said. Let me go to Dion Bussy Reader, because obviously family, we're impacted the most when there's a tragedy that happens because one of our family members may be experiencing a mental health episode. But I do find it ironic that we as a family, we've been dealing with that person for decades and never killed them. You've been dealing with them for 5 minutes and they're dead. That has to mean something to somebody who's in a policy position. What say you?
So again, thank you all for the opportunity to be here. I represent Southeast Washington, D.C. And I'm a fourth generation Washingtonian, so I have seen, and I grew up in Northwest. So I have seen the travesties of what we've done in our communities when we have disenfranchised our people. And quite frankly, one of the things that I wanted to jump in on the conversation earlier, and I appreciate you, brother, we've gotten to know each other really well with sincerely love, there's a piece of this that's missing. And what we've done to communities of challenge, or some of us like to call it communities of promise, like myself, is that we've systematically allowed or made responsible the people who have been disenfranchised as the problem. We've told these individuals, after we've moved them in my community, we've moved everyone east of the Anacostia River, where we actually have the majority of the individuals who live in the District of Columbia who fall 30% below the poverty line. The organization I represent with 54 employees, we serve 10% of that population in Ward 8. We touch anywhere from 7,500 to 10,000 people. And in that dynamic, 35% of those individuals, and I did a little research to make sure I'm prepared, because I'm up here with some serious scholars, you guys. 35% of those individuals claim to have depression, undiagnosed depression. We have a group of 90% of the families we serve are women-led households. On top of that, of the 90% of the women-led households, only 50% of those women are working. 20% of them make more than the average median income to be able to sustain themselves in the city, with up to 5 to 8 children, many of them now diagnosed with autism. So when we're talking about the mental health disorders, what we're doing is we're making responsible the people who have been disenfranchised by this system, responsible for coming up with the decisions and resolutions to solve each and everyday problems. Many of us don't know what it's like to have 5 babies in a house and 4 of them are autistic, with feces on the walls because they don't understand how to clean homes. We don't live in those kind of conditions on a regular basis sitting in this room, but I serve them. And what we're hearing more so than anything else is systematically these families are not being, the root causes of these issues are not being addressed, i.e. they can't afford to sustain where they live. Wouldn't you also be depressed if you could not afford to be able to get oodles and noodles, the worst meal alive for your family? But that's what we struggle with. So we have to address, while we're looking at the mental health crisis, we have to address the root causes of economics and social dynamics that's keeping our families impoverished. What also leads to the struggle that we're having with mental health disorders. I too would be depressed if I could not afford to take care of my family, and I only make $18.10 an hour, and my rent, as you all know, the District of Columbia is one of the highest areas of rental rates in this DMV area, where the average median income in our area is $125,000, and we're talking about families of sizes 5 to 10 that don't make $2,000 a month. So we got to deal with, as we're talking about the reforms, we've got to address the social dynamics that we're not. Economics matters.
That's right.
Our families are under-resourced, under-resourced, under economics, and do not have the education to pull themselves out of this situation. And we blame them for that problem.
And that's a connection between the first panel and this one.
Exactly.
The redistribution of economic wealth.
Yes.
As a great catalyst for solution. I want to open up the audience Q&A. Give them a round of applause. I saw you first, brother. Come on. Stand up, state your name and your question.
My name is Daniel Trubro. I'm a senior that goes to high school. So, with everything that you guys have said, I was just wondering, mental health is something that men are told to keep silent. All through, I guess, freshman year, people have said, you're not supposed to be depressed. There's things that people that are older than you have dealt with, and it's like you keep depressed, deal with it, move on from it. But I know there's one depression, besides not being able to take care of your family, that you'll never get to move away, and that's your parents dying. That's, one thing I don't want to go through, but I know I have to. And when that time comes, how are we going to deal with it? Because there's going to be episodes in your life where it might not even be when you realize it, but you might see someone that looks like your mother or your father, and an episode comes. And you're like, wow, I didn't, crisis moment. And you can't call anybody. There's not really a lot that you can do in that situation except pull over, cry, let all your emotions out, and move on about your day. Now, pushing forward with that, I want to know what, in your generation's timeline, what did they tell you to do in dealing with that mental situation? We're the same.
I know. No, I absolutely know, brother.
Let me say this, brother. What's your name again? Emmanuel. Let me give you some doubt, brother.
Absolutely.
I'm thankful. I'm thankful that you are my future leader, brother.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Brother, I thank you for having the courage to speak up and talk about depression. One of the things that I have dealt with most of my life is depression. I am depressed right now. But you cannot tell, nor will somebody ask me, how are you doing? This is why I ask the question, tell me you love me. Because sometimes, brother, in these situations, we don't hear it enough. We say, stand on your own too, be a man. But we're hurting as well. I've lost my mother. So I understand that too. Still having to go on through life, be a leader, pull your boots up, brother. But what my mother told me a long time ago, that once she's gone, prophetic, I will always have God holistically. I will always have God, and I stood in that. Yeah. So I began to live and walk and become that true and living. So I ask you to continue to be that, brother. You are not alone. You are absolutely not alone. So stay strong, cry when you need to.
That's right.
Because if you cry, you won't start a war. If you cry, you won't be a domestic abuser or you won't abuse yourself.
That's right.
Brother, it's okay. The true level of manhood is to be able to say, I'm hurting. So you're going to be fine. You're in good hands because we will gird you up and we got you. And we're going to let this brother who is in your generation
Can I just add one thing to that comment? I'm sorry. I wanted to say this. I lost my oldest sister. She was murdered by her husband in my sophomore year in college. I lost my mother to a broken heart in my senior year in college. What I realized that got me through, other than God, I'm saved and love the Lord with all my heart. But what got me through it was I got counseling. We don't talk about that enough. I sought out, they would not let me return to school until I was able to address and deal with the grief. So like this brother said, I'm a woman, had a wonderful dad, but don't know what it's like to be a dad, a brother. But what I'm saying to you is we have to be comfortable as a people, and nobody's coming to save us. Let's stop the foolishness. Yeah. As a group of people, we have to be comfortable with looking out for each other and being each other's keeper and saying counseling is okay, grief therapy is okay, because your mother or whomever may have left wants you to continue, and you can't do that alone.
Well said. And before you go, I want to say something to you directly, brother. 3 years ago, I lost my mother. Okay, and so your question struck me, man. And it was tough. And I realized that grief is only unexpressed love. You hear me? Express every ounce of love you can.
Absolutely.
For those who are with you. All right?
Absolutely.
I want to. That was beautiful there. I actually just had a loved one who was incredibly close to me that was just passed. Just had his funeral this past weekend, and I will go on to Doctor to add on to what you said. Grief oftentimes is a frustration of you not knowing what to do with that love for that person. Like, where do I put my love for this person because they're no longer here? I would also push back and say that mental illness is not what you would title an internal issue that you're having on the inside. What makes a person mentally ill is not knowing what to do with those emotions, what to do with those feelings, because to be depressed is a very natural thing. To be overwhelmed, to deal with anxiety. I had anxiety coming here, going up down BWI Parkway. Now, what would have made me mentally ill is if I had gotten out of my car and began to shoot up the highway. That's mental illness because I've lost my control. So any emotion that you have as a black man, when I launched my political campaign here about a month and a half ago, I told my team, I said, I'm leading all of my answers because of therapy. I want the conversation around therapy to be so normalized that people will say, that young man continues to say therapy. Why does he go to therapy so much? I go to therapy to keep from losing my mind. That's right. I go to therapy to keep from choking somebody out. So we have to normalize the conversation of therapy. And when we do that, when we normalize the conversation of therapy, we help other young black people, young black men know, and women, that there are avenues of escape for the internal discombobulation that you're feeling. There's somewhere to go and someone to listen and help you to process those emotions. So never feel overwhelmed or bad about therapy, and always run to it and your faith.
Amen. Absolutely.
Anybody else? All right. There you go.
She's been here.
My name is Rosalind Ray, and one of the things that I request from the panel, because of the National Bar, we always have panels, but we ask people if they have platforms to please let the people that are in the audience, particularly the young ones, know how we solve that. I am fortunate enough to have a platform because I'm on the Michael Collins show every Monday at 10 a.m. This week, Sheriff Pearson, who's one of the Tennessee Three, came on the air with us. And the one thing he stressed was voting. So I would ask all of you all to share with the younger people in the audience how their vote does count and what they need to do to be so important to change the mental health rules and to change the bail reform, to change mandatory minimums. Because in the District of Columbia, the police can arrest you and take you to the federal court, where it's a mandatory minimum, instead of the civil court, which is the lower DC Superior Court, where they have judgment, like you said, to do whatever they want to. So explain to them what they can do to help as young people coming behind us to fight all these things.
Let me do this. We have less than 5 minutes because we got to transition to our book signing with our brother Benjamin Crump. So what I want to do is give that question to our former mayor.
Well, it's hard for me to you said it in your question. Like, I unless you live under a rock, you have to see, I don't care how old you are, you have to understand that there's consequences for not voting. I mean, we are inundated every single day. So I think it's an important message, but I think every day that message is, turn on the radio, look at your social media feed. The evidence of the power of our vote is not just in what we're going through right now, but the fact that they're literally trying to steal it away from us and call it voter ID law.
Right.
So maybe I'm looking through rose-colored glasses and think that everybody's seeing what I see. But I have to believe, well, it's not even that. You saw the in every special election, the voter numbers are going up. So I think people get it. Doesn't mean that we don't have to continue to say it. We should all say it all the time. But I know that people see that we can't sit it out anymore, because we've seen in every, how many districts have flipped because of people have come out to vote. So I'm mad as hell every day about all of this stuff that we're seeing, but I'm optimistic that people understand that we can't, we can no longer sit it out, and people that have said, I'm not voting, my vote doesn't matter, I'm sitting it out because I don't 100% believe in this candidate, understand that that's basically a vote to oppress us.
That's right. Dr. Lynch, I'll let you close us out.
Thank you. I appreciate the question about what young people can do, and it certainly is important for our young people to be informed about the things that are legislative, but it's also about educating themselves on everything. A lot of what happened today, or what we discussed today, is about narratives being pushed and knowing what the misinformation and the disinformation that's out there. I know social media is the vehicle that most young people get their information, but they have to follow the right people. They have to be able to have critical lens of questioning what they see and be engaged and know what's going on. We're very proud faculty members here at Bowie State University, so we're proud that we are educating the next generation of clinicians and lawyers and activists, and we know that they're going to do an amazing job. Absolutely. The other thing, too, though, I want to say some things to our family members and parents. So one of the things, I appreciate the young man's question about how to handle mental illness, but we also have to learn how to position ourselves to be supportive of mental illness when people express it. We are quick to shut things down. You're too blessed to be stressed, right? We compare ourselves. We do an oppression Olympics, right? We tell, when someone tells us our problem, their problem, we shut them down with how our responses are. And so if they're being shut down by people who care about them, they're less likely to go seek professional help, right? Or when they do, and we have commentary about that, we have to let people take the journey that they need to take, and we need to support people's willingness to express themselves and to explore mental health. We can't heal ourselves. We haven't been able to do that just yet. So be supportive of people who are willing to express their concerns, their issues, to seek help, point them in the right direction, find out about different resources. 911 is not the only response when people are in crisis. Learn to understand that mental health and mental illness, there's varying degrees. It doesn't have to be a crisis. So learn to understand and to cope with things before they become crises. So all of us have an opportunity to educate ourselves and to be part of the solution. The system is working the way it's designed to work. It's not broken at all. It's working exactly how it's supposed to. So we need to close the gap ourselves as the community to be able to help ourselves.
Well said. Let's give the panel a round of applause. I'm sure the panel will stay in order to answer questions without any hesitation. Attorney. Okay.
We got a special presentation. Come on, guys.
Y'all give it up for this incredible panel. Once again, thank you for educating us and empowering us.
Thank you.
And certainly to Dr. Richey, a brilliant doctor, lawyer, scientist, PhD, man, you got a lot of jobs. But I want to be obedient. The great men of Omega wanted to make a presentation before we do the video. And you all who follow us on social media know what's coming.
Absolutely. I appreciate everybody that's on the panel for being here and presenting for our school. We appreciate Brother Ben Crump for coming to our school, and we wanted to present you with the Bowie State shirt so that you can represent our HBCU as well.
Hey, 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 hey. BSU? BSU?